My name is Claire, and I'm a college student. I was born when my parents were older, and I have a sister who is 12 years older than me. My sister is incredibly kind and responsible. She has a strong sense of responsibility. When she got married, I couldn't help but feel really lonely. She married pretty young, tying the knot with her college classmate, Walt, right after graduation. Seeing her so happy on her wedding day, I truly wished her all the happiness in the world. But before I even got to high school, my dad passed away suddenly. One morning, we found him collapsed in the hallway. He was gone just like that. It was a shock, especially for my mom, who took it really hard. My parents had been inseparable, so the loss was unimaginable for her. Seeing Mom so down, my sister and her husband offered to move in with us. Though Mom and I initially declined, feeling it would be an imposition, my responsible sister couldn't bear to see Mom struggling. So, in a way, she insisted, and the four of us, Mom, me, my sister, and her husband, started living together. Walt is a friendly guy and always treated me warmly, calling me Little Claire. He also cared for Mom, and I believe he's a good person. However, I was in high school, full of teenage angst. Having a young man in the house who wasn't related by blood made me feel really uneasy. There were days when I just didn't want to go home at all. Still, I focused on my studies and earned a state college recommendation, mostly to give Mom some peace of mind. She was thrilled when she found out. "Claire, you're such a hard worker," she said, hugging me with a smile. But before I started college, Mom passed away. She had been dealing with a chronic illness that suddenly worsened, and she was gone just like that. Now facing college without either of my parents, I told myself I have to be strong. You see, I was born when my parents were older. I knew that I would have to say goodbye to my parents earlier than most people my age. So the sadness of this parting was expected. I always told myself I had to be strong and started living my life with that resolve. All I had to do was get through college and graduate, and everything would be fine. However, after my mom passed away, Walt, my sister's husband, changed his behavior towards me, making life even more challenging. My sister had recently gotten a promotion and was too busy to handle household chores. At a time when I was a student with a relatively flexible schedule, I ended up taking on the household chores. Around the same period, Walt was laid off. While constantly saying, "I've got to find a job," Walt would just lounge around the house without lifting a finger to help with any chores. It became expected that I would make all the meals. If I cooked something he didn't like, he'd blatantly say, "I can't eat this," and throw it away right in front of me. I was both sad and furious, but he was my sister's husband. He never treated me like that in front of her. I didn't want to cause any issues in their marriage, so I kept my mouth shut. However, Walt's behavior continued to worsen. Whenever I came home from college, someone from Walt's family was always at our house. Most of the time, it was Walt's parents. Not only Walt, but also his parents started treating our house as if it were their own. They'd open our fridge and bring in their stuff, even hiding it in the closet. Every time they saw me, both Walt and his parents would suggest that I should move out soon. "Claire, you're in college now. You should be living on your own. We kept quiet because you are our dear sister-in-law. But it's been a while since Mom passed away, hasn't it? You must be feeling more settled now." Exactly. It's weird for you to keep living with your sister and her husband. "Becoming independent is part of growing up, Claire. You need to do that soon." Exhausted from their constant nagging, I just respond with a dismissive, "Sure." I had been hearing comments like,
You should move out when you go to college so I don't look like a weirdo.
From Walt since high school, so their words hardly fazed me. I wondered if I was the strange one, but I just couldn't bring myself to leave the house, filled with memories of my parents. More importantly, I was afraid that if I left, Walt and his parents would completely take over the house. One day, Walt was in a particularly bad mood and pestered me more than usual while I was folding laundry.
When are you moving out?
This is my home. I don't want to leave.
Look, Claire, how much money did you get when your mother passed?
What? Confused, I listened as Walt continued.
You got some money, right? Use that to move out. If you're going to stay here, you'll have to pay rent. Even Kyra is getting annoyed because you're still here.
My sister is? My sister was always exhausted from her demanding job, coming home worn out every day. She would apologize, saying, "I'm sorry," for leaving all the housework to me. She was so run down that I had to tell her, "You should get some rest," even when she tried to help with just the dishes. I didn't want to burden her anymore, so I took on all the household duties to be of some help. To think she found me a bother? I was so shocked, my hands froze.
You must realize it's weird, right? Living with a married couple? Kyra is just putting up with you. She probably finds you annoying. Maybe you're even the reason we can't have kids.
Walt said with a smirk. I couldn't believe his words. My sister would never say that. Should never say that. But his words hurt me nonetheless. I couldn't bear to be in the same room with Walt any longer, so I ran out into the pouring rain. I grabbed an umbrella on my way out, but it wasn't enough to keep me dry. Soaked through, I found myself standing at the bus stop. I had been waiting there for my sister to come home. Hours later, she showed up looking tired and worn out. I couldn't hold back my tears any longer as I rushed towards her shouting, "Sis!" "Claire?" she said, visibly surprised to see me. "What are you doing out here? You're soaked." "Do you find me annoying, sis? Am I a burden for you and Walt? Am I the reason you can't have children?" "Of course not. What's gotten into you?" My questions clearly rattled her, but I had to know. "Is it weird that I'm living with you?" She took me to a late-night cafe to calm me down, patting my crying back all the way. Over a warm drink, I told her everything. I kept silent because I didn't want to burden her, but I realized I couldn't handle it alone anymore. Maybe Walt was sizing up my worth, thinking of how much money he could get from me. They probably planned to squeeze that amount of rent out of me. My sister, swamped with work, had no idea any of this was happening at home. "I'm sorry I didn't notice." She apologized to me repeatedly. We both regretted that I hadn't said anything sooner. Once I had calmed down, my sister declared, "I won't forgive Walt for pushing my dear sister this far. We're going to have a proper talk. Father-in-law and mother-in-law will be there, of course." My sister, who lately only wore a tired expression, had eyes bursting with anger. Her fury snapped me awake. I finally realized the people in the wrong weren't me, but Walt and his parents. My sister managed to take some time off work and told Walt and his parents that we needed to talk. Walt seemed confused, unsure why a discussion was needed, but after my sister told him, "You can't forget what you've done to Claire," he seemed to catch on. Feeling it was too risky for her to be alone with Walt, my sister rented a weekly apartment for me. She stayed there herself until the day of the discussion. When the day arrived, Walt, who seemed to have expected the topic to be about home ownership, immediately began speaking.
"So, this is about who owns the house, right? I've been living here for years. I'm the man, and Kyra married into my family, so the house should naturally belong to us. If Claire just leaves, that'll settle it."
"Exactly, Walt. You moved here to take care of your mother-in-law. You should be grateful," added his mother. But Walt, you've done nothing. You may have had kind words from my mother, but never acted on them. She even had to make your lunch for work. I responded calmly, leaving Walt's mother speechless. My sister then began. Do you not realize how ridiculous you sound? Walt says he owns the house because he's lived here for many years. But Claire has lived here much longer, ever since she was a child.
Well, I lived here as an adult, so it should be mine,
Walt countered. By that logic, I moved back as an adult too, so doesn't it also become my house? My sister responded.
I'm the man and Kyra is the woman, so naturally I should own the house,
Walt exclaimed. Home ownership has nothing to do with being male or female, my sister snapped back. Stumped by her words, Walt seemed to mumble something under his breath. Walt's parents looked at each other, clearly troubled. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by my sister's authoritative voice. Get a divorce. With that, she handed Walt pre-filled divorce papers. Shocked, Walt pushed the papers back.
Why, we were just discussing who owns the house.
You misunderstood. I came here today to discuss divorce. His voice feeble, Walt asked,
Why?
Getting laid off wasn't your fault, but you barely even looked for another job. I heard it all from Claire. You didn't help with the housework either. You told me you and Claire shared chores. That's a lie. Walt had been pretending to look for work, all while lying about helping me with chores. My sister had learned the truth when I mentioned doing all the housework myself at a cafe. Walt stammered, struggling to find the right words, but my sister was unforgiving. This house legally belongs to Claire. Only those she approves of can live here. Entering without the homeowner's consent is trespassing. Claire, what would you like to do? Straightening my back, I answered clearly. Walt and his parents should never set foot in this house again. This is my home, filled with memories of my mom and dad. I won't allow it to be taken away. I first learned that I was the homeowner of this house from my sister. My mom had left me the house, thinking it would be a problem if I had nowhere to live if something happened to her. Walt and his parents had a lot to say about that. My house was located downtown, so the location was great. Walt's parents loved it and had even started preparations to move in. They used to run a restaurant together, but closed it because they were planning to move.
Just when we can't move in anymore, we even started arranging for renovations.
Walt's dad revealed that they had almost started remodeling my house without my consent. What's more, it turned out my sister and her husband were supposed to pay for the renovation. Since Walt wasn't earning any money, this would naturally come out of my sister's pocket. Fed up with the outrageous demands from Walt and his parents, my sister feigned calling the police. The three of them left in haste. We sent Walt's belongings, along with the personal items his parents had hidden in our closet, back to their family home and cut all ties. My sister consulted a lawyer and filed for divorce. Even after the divorce was finalized, Walt and his parents were occasionally lurking around our house, so we reported it to the police. After the police intensified patrols, treating it as a stalking case, Walt and his parents stopped coming near our house. Their life became very difficult afterward. With their restaurant closed, Walt's parents were jobless. Walt was also unemployed, struggling to make ends meet every day. Now, my sister and I live happily together in the home we protected.